Welcome to the second episode of The Blueprint, a new series to get inside the minds of people contributing to our community, including founders who have built some of America's greatest businesses. I'm excited to have a conversation today with our next guest, a Wall Street giant, Jimmy Dunne. Jimmy is Vice Chairman and Senior Managing Principal of Piper Sandler. He was one of the founders of Sandler O'Neill, one of the largest private investment banking firms in history. In 2020, Piper Jaffray acquired Sandler O'Neill, and Jimmy has continued to play an active role in the firm's M&A business. Jimmy's influence spans well beyond finance into the worlds of philanthropy and sports. He's a loyal graduate, supporter, and trustee of the University of Notre Dame, as well as a huge competitor on the golf course. And he's someone I'm proud to call a friend. Jimmy, great to be here.
Delighted to be with you.
Let's start at the very beginning, which I just learned from you and I chatting here. Goes all the way back to L.F. Rothschild and municipal bonds.
That's correct.
Start there, but the thing I'm most focused on is the experience you built there, but then founding Sandler O'Neill.
Sure. I got out of Notre Dame, as I say, in '78 without honor. And and I applied to some good law schools, not as good as the one you went to, but some very good law schools. And I didn't get into any, was the gist of it, and which worked out. Things tend to work out the right way. And then I had caddied for a guy who was a Wall Street guy, and he had asked me what's going on. My last school had rejected me, and he said, "That's great news. You should go to Wall Street and trading and sales." And I said, "Well, trade and sell what?" He said, "Doesn't matter." Anyway, we had some interviews, and I had gotten 6 different interviews with some good firms and got 6 offers. In those days, it was a lot easier. The one place that I didn't want to go to, because I thought the guy that interviewed me was particularly tough and they offered me the least amount of money, it was the one he told me to go to, which was L.F. Rothschild. And the gentleman that hired me was a guy named Dick Olstein, who I still see all the time. And he finished his career at Sandler. Anyway, so I went to L.F. Rothschild and basically started in municipal bonds. But I felt I wanted to go into trading, and so that I went and traded securities for a number of years, and that cumulatively was a good background, sort of 6 years after that, 4 years at Rothschild, and then we started Sandler O'Neill, having left Bear Stearns.
So you have basically approximately 10 years at some great firms, and then you go and you start Sandler O'Neill with colleagues.
That's right.
What caused you to do that, and what was the genesis? What was the very first conversation that created Sandler O'Neill?
That's a great question, and it's a great story. What had happened was some of the guys that had left the municipal bond business and gone to the mortgage, because tax laws changed, so mortgage-backed securities sort of simulated the cash flows of a municipal bond. When you think about it, Greg, made a lot of sense. They had migrated to Bear Stearns. So Herman Sandler and a group of them had gone there. They got me to go over with them for what I call the 10 years of my MBA, starting in '78 and finishing for the last 2 years at Bear Stearns. Interestingly enough, it's just the same thing about like not getting into law school. In those days, you had production numbers that based on promotions, and I had a very, very good couple of years, and my numbers indicated that I would get a certain title. I even forget what the title was, but it was associate director. I don't think it was a managing director, but it was a title I wanted. And my immediate boss, Herman Sandler, said, "Congratulations." So I went into, with the head men, the head bosses, to hear how great I was, and they gave me a really good bonus, but they didn't give me the title. The point of the story is I was not happy, and I basically was really direct. I said, this is not about anything I've done. This is about your inability to do what's right. And I basically said that I've earned this. You know that. I know that. You've had to do the wrong thing to somebody. You decided it was me. That was a good choice, because after I get done saying what I've got to say, I'm going to put a smile on my face. I'm going to go back out there and continue to do the good job. But, this is outlandish thing to say, but I told him, I said, look, I've come here for one reason and one reason only. My goal is to run Bear Stearns. And this is a small setback. It's a tiny thing. It's, you've done the wrong thing, but all you have to do is tell me the day you don't think I have a chance to run Bear Stearns, then you tell me, and then I'm going to leave. The next day, we really didn't communicate that much. The next day, I came in, I did this big trade. It was May 1. because that was the beginning of the fiscal year. And the guy that I kind of had it, that I basically told what I thought of, came over and made a big deal, and everybody's smiling and happy. And my boss, who was a tough, smart guy, Herman Sandler, kind of looked at me and went, come back here. And I assumed he was going to be, unhappy, because I basically told this guy that you didn't do the right thing. Let's don't hide it. But here's what I'm after. I'm after much bigger fish than what you're fooling around with. And just tell me the truth. Anyway, I go back there with Herman. I start off by saying, hey, I know that was too aggressive. I apologize to you. He said, apologize to me? Why? You don't owe me an apology. And I said, well, I kind of lit into him. And he said, yeah, but, he lied to you again. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you're never going to run Bear Stearns. Ever. You're not their kind of guy. And I'll never forget my young, dumb reaction. I was so offended by that, I immediately said to him, well, you're not either, which was an incredibly childish response. But I laugh about it, and he and I have laughed about it. I said, well, you're not either. He said, and then he, of course, being 10 times smarter than I was, he said, you're right, I'm not. I said, well, then I'm out of here. He said, oh, yeah, we're both out of here. But we're not going to go work for somebody else and do this all again. We're going to start our own firm. It was not my idea. It was his idea.
I love that story for two reasons. One is, I say this to young people all the time, because they come in, and the young people are so impressive these days.
They are.
Things they do, and they say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And I say, you may end up doing those things, but it's not going to be in that order, and life is going to move you here rather than here. You applied to law school. You then went into Wall Street. You're at Bear Stearns. You're going to run Bear Stearns. Now you're going to go found Sandler O'Neill. And the second reason I like that story is because that is vintage Jimmy Dunne. And you know that it is. The Jimmy Dunne who's now worked for over 45 years, that's Jimmy Dunne. So tell us and the listeners about Sandler O'Neill, what happened next, and you built this incredible firm. How did you do that?
I liked the idea when he said that we're going to run our own firm. I was really focused on performing, and I loved this guy, Herman Sandler. He was a brilliant guy. And I was very good about what was going on. He was very good about what will go on. Our background, really, the six of us in total really were Sandler's mind, and the six of us were good fixed income people. I had a mediocre career, but a career nonetheless in trading and sales, so that I was in charge of all commitment taking.
So you were the risk. You had risk.
Totally in charge of risk,
which is probably for a startup firm like that one of the most important things, because you can't.
Well, everything. As you know, when you're starting, everything is important.
To say that's one of the things that's interesting, because my career was two big firms in here, and when you're basically building a firm, exactly what you said. Everything's important.
Everything is important. What I always tell everybody, and I always encourage anybody, even if people from Sandler, if they were going to leave to start their own, I'd say it's more. It's more pain. It's more joy. It's more work. It's more hardship. It's more joy. It's everything is more. And so you have got to be accountable for what's on the floor in the bathroom to the biggest client. You got to do everything and do everything well. Anybody that's really good at something, we both enjoy. And James Dean, I always thought, was a great actor. And they asked him, what does it take to really be a great actor? And he said, you have to be good at everything and try to learn everything about everything. Other than that, it's easy. And that's kind of like starting a firm. You just, you're responsible day and night till it's done.
I agree with you. And I use one of the same examples you do, which is if I see a piece of paper on the floor,
pick it up.
I pick it up. And it's ours. And we try to instill that mindset.
That's an example.
Yeah, it does.
You're not above anything. But also that's the way we felt.
Yeah.
And Sandler had a certain tone. And like he taught me the greatest lesson when we were actually at Bear Stearns, even about productivity. I remember we were going through bonuses, and I was in the room, but not making the call. Herman was making the calls. And he got to this one point about one of the guys wanted to give a guy like $10,000, and Herman was like, why? And he said, well, he's got, kids, and he's trying hard, this and that. He said, no. We're going to give the other $10,000 to so-and-so. He said, but and then the guy said, well, he's got a $5 million bonus. He said, yeah, we're going to give him $5 million, $10,000. I'd rather overpay this guy $10,000 and make sure either this person's going to get with it or not, but we're not going to enable it. And right then, that was when I knew, that Sandler looked at things differently than I did, because I would have been in his camp, and Sandler was right and I wasn't. Now, the one skill I have is I may make a mistake, but I'm not going to defend it. And once I hear something, he's got, I'm all in. And so we had a very much of a meritocracy. At the end of the year, you're either underpaid, fairly paid, or overpaid. Which category do you think you're in and why? And you better bet, and I'm going to assume you're going to say you're underpaid, you better be able to defend it. And if you waste my time because you're defending it just because you think we're here for a debate, that's going to be worse for you.
We built a firm around a very similar culture. We talk about excellence in everything.
Excellence.
And then we talk about having a collaborative, collegial approach.
Absolutely.
We want people to be upbeat and enjoying it.
Grow the pie.
Excellence is the bar. And actually, given all what you've done with sports and Notre Dame, one of my favorite quotes is Lombardi, who said, "Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase it, we might just catch excellence."
I love Lombardi.
All the people here can recite, and my kids have been hearing it for years. Let me talk to you or ask you about something that you're famous for, which is saying, and I'll paraphrase, and you tell me exactly what you say. But you better be running when the sun gets up or when the sun is up. What do you say to people?
Well, it doesn't really matter your size. So my attitude was, look, we bigger firms, they're not advantaged yet. They got to have the same technique. They still got to catch the slowest gazelle. And what our attitude is, we have got to be better, fitter, faster. And if you're not jumping out of bed and like really coming in and ready to give it everything you got, and with no sense of entitlement, no sense of I'm already there, an element of insecurity, not enough to make you insane, but enough to really a healthy amount of paranoia without it carrying over the edge. That's what we were looking for. And always assuming that, look, if you're not providing your client with good ideas, good conversations, somebody else will be. And they will catch the gazelle or the lion, whichever it was.
That is a great worldview. That worldview is what bonds and binds you and me and Jack Brennan.
Yeah.
And you were there for when I interviewed Derek Jeter and Michael Strahan. And you hear Derek say that. All those years at the Yankees, if they drafted a shortstop, he was aware of the fact that they drafted a shortstop. Here is one of the greatest baseball players in history, was aware of the shortstop that was now in the system. Back to your point about a little bit of paranoia and staying on the front foot, staying hungry.
When somebody's really good at something, there's a reason. There's nobody lucks their way up there. Jeter had a little degree of paranoia. My friend Tom Brady has a healthy degree of paranoia. Michael Jordan had a healthy degree, and you can see it in their eyes. You can see it in the way they react. And you can see in their face when their conversation goes. I had asked a question to Jeter, which I thought was interesting.
That was a great question. You should repeat it here. Yeah.
Well, I always ask anybody that's really great, if you could take somebody like Johnny Bench. Okay, you're Johnny, and I asked Johnny this question. You got two equally matched teams. You got two coaching staffs that's basically the same. You're playing the 7th game of the World Series. You can take one player off the field. It could be any player you want, but he can't play. Who would it be and why?
What did Johnny say?
Johnny said Willie Mays. He said the thing about Willie Mays is he was constantly thinking about how he can beat you. That when he did that little shuffle when he was in the batter box, everybody said that. He said that was trying to steal the sign. I asked Jeter the question, and he and Roy McIlroy answered pretty similarly. Well, a little differently. Jeter's answer was, I want the best out there. I want to beat the best.
I love that answer.
It was a hell of an
sincere,
answer.
It's Derek.
He meant it because I didn't let him go right away. Because you know what is interesting about that? Certain things are pretty good about that. They all pause when they hear it.
You tell, because you asked Derek and Michael Strahan when I interviewed them that question, and Derek gave the answer, nobody. And then Strahan said, "Oh, come on." And then he said, "I'm going to name him." Obviously, he's talking about Brady. Did you tell Tom that story?
Yeah, well, Stray and Tom,
they're good friends.
They're very good friends. Now, Tom, we're seeing a different side as doing announcing because he's saying this guy's good, this guy. When Tommy was a tough grader, and when it came to football, like when you would talk about anything, like he's very inquisitive. He'd want to know about Wall Street. He'd want to know about whatever it was, and he was so gentle in his communication. He was soft almost, As soon as the topic changed to football, everything changed. His face changed, this changed, and his attitude changed. So the only guys that, not when he's announcing now, it's a very different thing. But when he's just talking to you, the guys he really respected were Ed Reed, from the Ravens, Ray Lewis from the Ravens, and he loved Stray. He thought Stray was a great player, and he also thought Stray was a great sportsman because he remembers this one play, and he says that he's a dumb player. The offensive coordinator was trying something I knew wasn't going to work, and he gets himself all worked up. He calls this play anyway. Stray didn't go for it just as he expected, and Stray had an even shot to him. And he said he hit him such in a way that he didn't just impale him into the ground. He kind of just got him down. And then he said to him, he said, "Thanks, Stray." He said, "I got you, Tom." And then, so they had that professional courtesy with one another.
That's great.
But he had a high regard for Stray.
That's excellent.
And as a man, too.
So let's come back to Sandler and the sale to Piper after many years, 2020. What's that like? The transition, the culture, and Jimmy Dunne has a boss for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
What is all that like?
That's different. Well, the first thing is, some of that, I've always feel like things can go bad. So I'm very good when things are bad because I'm expecting them to be bad. I don't ever think the sun's going to shine. So now that's good in certain ways, but it's limiting in some ways. You mentioned that Blackstone started the same day. Yeah, because they took risks that I was unwilling to take. They did things that I was certainly unwilling to do, and they were rewarded handsomely. A man's got to know his limitations, okay? That was not my skill set. I was very concerned about a number of things. I'm always concerned about how long it will last, how you keep going every year. And I was also really concerned when Obama first took over about the tax law. I thought the deficits were going to, absolutely implode. Right. I was right. They keep imploding, which is really scary, okay? I also thought that they would have, I kind of think about, you got to pay this money back. So we're going to have to raise taxes. And I thought that and I was clearly wrong, okay? But I thought that capital gains rate would go to ordinary income. And so I thought we'd have a window where you could harvest at a capital gains rate, and then you could obviously compounding at a better tax rate. So the reality of it is that I was concerned, and I wanted to get a transaction done.
So you picked a window. You said, this is the time.
Window.
This is the time.
Hugh McCall came into my office, and he talked about that ordinary tax rates had gotten in the late 60s to 90%. And that scared me. So I felt like we better harvest some value. So, and then the problem though, and I think I talked to you about this when we were doing it, actually, when you were at Merrill Lynch at the time, I wasn't so thrilled about taking just anybody's currency. So that was another issue. So what we ended up doing is I came up with the idea that we could sell a portion of the firm, less than 50%, to a private equity investor. We could harvest at the capital gains rate. And then if we were wrong and the firm did really, really well, we still owned over 50%. If the firm, the way it would be a great transaction is that if we failed miserably. Now, I was going to die trying. We didn't want that to happen. And I knew there was an inflection point at about 7 years where it kind of broke even, which was just about when what happened. And so we did a deal with Kelso and Carlyle. And so we sold a portion of it, which in the end was there wasn't particularly great. They were good firms, but it didn't make that much difference to us. But then once we did that, you had to then find another partner or go public.
The second shoe.
Second shoe.
Yeah.
And I spent a long time and through different CEOs talking to Piper Jaffray at the time, and we eventually Chad Abraham was the CEO at the time we did the deal. Very smart guy, still the CEO, my boss, I was really determined. Most Wall Street deals, as you well know, don't work. They're people business. The stars leave. It's a mess.
One entirely different culture from another one. Yeah.
They liked our culture because everything we did was based on merit. So there was we don't like any fluff. I used to say, and it would drive people crazy, Sandler is not a family, okay? We are a bloodthirsty machine that feeds a lot of families. There's a distinction. I got a family. Now, I need the people on my team, so that I can feed my family, all right? So we really did a pretty good job of right-sizing everybody. So we were basically ready to either go public or sell every day because the percentages were never correct, but they were always trending correct. If you got really overpaid one year, your percentage would go down, and until we looked at it over a 5-year period of time. And for the most part, it worked out. So we felt we had a pretty good model, and they had a lot of respect for it. And so I was determined, and obviously John Doyle runs the firm now, and I talked to John this morning, and he's been at Sandler his whole career. He knows what he's doing. And, we did the deal when the stock was about 70. I think the stock's at like 280 right now. And
fantastic.
The deal's worked. I felt like every opportunity with every client was a chance that we could end up with a reference when we're done. That's what we would always say. You're in the business of creating references. If we create enough references, we're going to make plenty of money. Worry about how they feel about you. Worry about what would they say about your firm. And that helped. That helped a lot.
That's a fantastic philosophy. I have lived my life and career that way, and we're trying to do that here every single day. And it does come back to, you said you're a fighting machine. It comes back to excellence. And if you're not if the focus is on excellence, you're not going to do that.
And you can tell that at Rockefeller already, because what I like about your firm, is that obviously key people are very capable. I know that already. But I'm not going to be necessarily talking to the key people. I need to talk to you, I can talk to you. I need to talk to the two guys, I can talk to them. But the guy I'm really interested in, really smart, up-and-coming Jimmy Dunne, that's who I want to talk to. Because that's the guy where if he does a really great job, I'm going to make sure everybody knows about it. You're going to reward excellence. And you have those kinds of people. We had a thing just the other day where, you always have a problem. You have an old team and a new team. You got to get my people, the new team. The old team is not threatened by the new team. Well, they're going to be a little threatened. So you deal with this every time. Obviously the senior people, that's no issue. They're going to do it. I'm not worried. But I can't live on the senior people. I got to have the guys that are doing the work. And your team handled that. First of all, they were right. And it's kind of a good thing. It really helps if you're right. If you're wrong, don't defend the mistake. Say that I made the mistake. Don't waste time. Because you can make a mistake, but when you defend it, it's like being late. It's rude. It's unacceptable, okay? Your guy was right. And all he said it very quietly. The guys that you're going to be dealing with, they're probably similar. And I'm really good with other people's money. My own, I never felt like I had enough. I never even looked at it. I was driving to make it.
Yes.
And
which, by the way, is so true of everybody. We're all the same. Everybody's the same, which is why we're building a firm around helping people like you.
I love
it. Because they're focused on other things always. They're just driving, and we're here to provide.
Steve in your place knows more about my stuff than I do. Now, that's not a compliment to me. But I don't really.
But almost everybody like you is like.
I don't. You're right, but that doesn't excuse why I don't know it. I don't care about it. Honestly, that's ridiculous. But I want someone to care about it.
Yeah.
And Rockefeller, your team can do it. And now I'll make judgments, and I'm really excited about because I'm excited because I won't do something foolish. And that's really. That's a big part of the valuation.
Now, I want to bring you back in time, and this isn't easy for you to talk about, but it is such a seminal event in the country's history, and your involvement was so unique, and it is such an incredible story. So, can you talk a little bit about September 11th, and make sure you tell people listening, because they don't know the story the way I do, where you were on the 11th, where you were supposed to be,
right,
and how that kind of made you feel the rest of your life after that. So let's maybe start with that.
September 11th is obviously a terrible day in our history. But what we had moved to the World Trade Center.
What year was that?
We moved basically the week of the first bombing, when those imbeciles had the Ryder truck and they went below. And what happened in that first bombing, which 6 people died that day, and they're remembered in the memorial. But so we moved in that Monday, and what happened was I was still in trading then. I hadn't moved over to banking yet. Sandler moved me over to banking, which is a whole nother story. But I was, we trading we were good at, and we had a good team, and we had people that we had no nonsense. We were tight. We moved in that week, that Monday. That Friday was the first bombing. And what had happened was I was on the floor. I can distinctly remember within minutes of the Ryder Cup bombing on the other building in the basement, you actually could smell the smoke, minutes later. And I remember thinking that odd. I didn't want to alarm anybody. I went out to look at which I never did, to look at the windows, look out the window, and it was absolutely beautiful outside. And I remember thinking, this is really odd. And then I said, look, something's happening. I don't know what it is. I went on a loudspeaker. I said, there are three options right now. You can walk down the stairs. It's dark. Be careful. You can't see 5 feet in front of you because they didn't have any of the lights or anything down that first time. You can walk down the stairs. 2, you can go up 2 flights and get outside if the smoke is, because that'll be fresh air. I don't know what that will be like, but that's it, option number 2. Or you can stay here and we'll see what happens. I don't know the right thing to do. But you're free to do whatever you feel is best. And interesting, a core of us stayed. And then we walked down. It was a long, we walked
So
down.
with the elevator shut
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
even though it was the other building, they shut the elevator down.
Yeah, somehow, and I don't remember why or what happened exactly, Greg, but somehow the elevator, we walked down the stairs. The next day, our CFO and Mabe Delviedro, our office manager, Leslie Richard, came over to the apartment because now we got to find space. And we thought we were only there 5 days, And so the office manager, Leslie Richard, who's still with us, said to me, you didn't go to get your ID picture taken yesterday, like jokingly. And I said to her, because we're very dry, I said, Leslie, I'll be honest with you. I had forgotten about that. I wasn't going to I didn't like to leave the desk. I didn't even like to go to the bathroom, And I said, I wasn't going to leave the desk. I didn't do that. She goes, well, I'm really glad you didn't. Because your appointment was 5 minutes after that bomb went off. And that's where the people died. I don't want to call it, there's nothing compares to 9/11, but, we had that situation. Now, unfortunately, 9/11, Herman was there and Chris was there and I was not.
Can you tell everybody why that was the case? Because you were supposed to be.
I should have been there. What had happened with that was that I always tried to play golf, and I like golf because it's a meritocracy. You get what you shoot. And there's a difference between there's golf, there's tournament golf. Bobby Jones said there's golf, there's tournament golf, and there's major championship golf. I don't know anything about major championship golf, but I know a little something about tournament golf. At this point, Herman Sandler wanted to move me into banking. And I thought that was a terrible idea, because I didn't want to go. 2, I was pretty comfortable where I was. 3, we were making most of our money on trading. I didn't like the idea at all. And typical Sandler, he said, no, we're a partnership, Jimmy. You got the trading side humming. We might make a little less by you not being out there, but we're going to make what we're going to make. But where you can really help is Chris in running that area. That's where we can make it different. And we're interested in the bottom line. We're not interested in how big the different pieces are.
It's a great answer.
Well, of course it's a great answer. Every time he had it, everything he said, you would have never heard of Jimmy Dunne without him himself. Okay. And, or Ed Hurley, for that matter, to be another day. But Hurley and Sandler are the 2 biggest impacts, and Quackenbush, of course, are the 2 biggest impacts on my career, in a lot of ways, my life. Anyway. And so he wanted me to move over to the banking side, which I had no interest in because, I'm not really, I wasn't trained as a banker. Oddly enough, though, this is why it's so important. Like Quackenbush used to always talk about, he said, you'd be a unbelievable banker. You can talk to boards. You can get people's trust. You have good instinct.
And you have that relentless.
And Hurley, he would say that, and Quackenbush would say that. So I had that a little bit in the back of my mind. Now, I didn't know Ed at the time, but I knew, obviously, I knew Quack my whole life. And he said, you would become a great banker. You'll be a better banker. I said, I ain't going to be a better banker than you because, Quackenbush was a little bit like your background. NYU, and then he went to NYU Law School. He went to North Carolina undergrad. Obviously, he went to Colgate and Yale. But, the law, I wanted that law degree, which I never got, anyway, that's a whole nother story. But so I went over to the banking side. And what happened was, this is now, right? This is sort of maybe July of 2001. Quackenbush had walked into my office, which was next to his office on the banking side, and he saw the application to qualify for the Mid-Amateur, and he said, you're playing really well. Where are you going to go? I said, well, I'm going to go to Round Hill on the 10th of September because it's a Monday. If I go up there and shoot 75 and I don't make it, I don't waste the whole week. And Quackenbush looked at it, and, he was my best friend. He's one of the smartest guys I ever know. And so he said, you shouldn't go to Round Hill. You should go to Bedford on the 11th because you can get it under par at Bedford, and you could get in. And I took the application, didn't even give it another thought, and I had so trust for Quack. I hit the 11th, gave it to my assistant. My assistant died, and Quack died. I believe that there are reasons for things. I don't know what the reason is for this. I really don't. But what I tell you is I had two unbelievable training wheels in my career. One was Herman Sandler, and the other was Chris Quackenbush. Well, they're taking off the training wheels. So now I got to write. Now, I won't be worth my salt if I don't perform for those guys. When I went to sit shiva with Herman's wife, she made the point. They had a meeting. Two had to go do your job, wipe your tears, get to work. I only cried really twice. Now I think about it now, but at that time we had a job to do. Now, within that job, everyone in the world, including competitors like yourself, were trying to help us.
Yeah.
That was unmistakable. It was an incredible time for the country.
We were, Merrill was next door, so we were not there we had to move out for 4 or 5 months. And Larry Fink had extra space at BlackRock on Park Avenue because he was moving.
Yeah.
I moved 300 people into there, the whole financial institutions group.
We moved into 9
There were so many things like that.
Everybody did. Everybody did what they could. The whole attitude, the city, what this country can accomplish when we get together is mind-boggling. It's not any different what a firm can accomplish. We had everybody in the world, and it's a matter of perspective. This friend of mine once said to me, hey, let me ask you a question. How does it feel at that time? How does it feel to have 225 million Americans rooting for you? And, and that's the right way to look at it. It wasn't like it was unsurmountable. Some people see Goliath, they see a really big guy. Other people see him like, I can't miss this guy. How can I miss him? I'm going to hit him.
Yeah, I'm going to move you off this because it's so tough. I want to go to, because I want to make sure we get through a couple more topics. Let's go to live and golf.
Sure.
Everything's happening there. Because you've had an incredible career in the golf space. And then I want to get to Notre Dame before we wrap up. But talk about live and how that came together. And I mean, you've been front and center in kind of the restructuring of, or the attempted restructurings of professional golf.
Right.
Talk a little bit about
golf.
that. Yes.
And in hindsight, I was naive. But when I first went on the board, which was January of 23, I remember, I was only on the board for literally, 6 months before the framework agreement was done of the PGA Tour. The tour, not the PGA, the PGA Tour. And basically, I did not understand why we didn't talk to the guy on the other side. And I was always like, I want the principals to get together. Well, you did too. We would both, and that's why if you were ever on the other side of a banking deal, I never mind you talking to my client. I mean, I got my client. You want to talk to him, talk to him. And vice versa, you'd say, talk to Jimmy. And now, of course, the other bank, we got to have 9 people in the room, and we got to worry. I can't have him talk to my clients. It's just insane, And so I basically, where I should be held accountable is I said, look, there is nothing that they do that I understand. Nothing. I don't understand the format. I don't understand the shorts. I don't understand anything. And so why don't we talk to the guy that's funding it? Not the guy that's getting paid, but the guy with the money. Why are we not talking to him? And nobody had a good answer for that for me. And so I said, and so I started in January. By April, we basically agreed to talk to him. I went over, met with him. I actually had dinner with him 2 nights ago over at the Dunne. And I felt that...
Sorry.
Well, no. I went over to the Scotland. He played in the event. Jay Monahan played the event. Well, I just saw him yesterday, 2 days, Saturday night for dinner.
But at the time, the first meeting, where was that?
That was in London.
In London, okay.
So we went to London, and he wanted to play golf, which I didn't think was a good idea because I said, Yasser, I said, a lot of people know me in golf, and anybody doesn't get to know you. I mean, and so there wasn't many people there because he took care of that. So anyway, but I met with him, and I liked him. And I think he liked me. I know he liked me. And I felt and I still felt that, he's getting really bad advice and making bad decisions because they were sort of treating it like a portfolio company, and the guy run it. And so I felt that we could unite the game. And the only two people that had no economic interest, and there's nothing wrong with an economic interest, just be aware, were Ed Hurley and myself. We got no pay, we got no fee, we didn't want anything. We tried to do just to unite the game. Yeah. So we met, and I thought we could come to some understanding that would be better for the game. So I thought it was absolutely critical that we get, agreement to move forward. Where I was naive, Greg, and where I to this day I can't believe how much I missed it, is I thought an announcement where we were basically saying that the lawsuits were settled with prejudice, so we win. They are not able to play on the DP Tour or the PGA Tour. They can't relitigate, and we don't have to pay $25 million a year for legal fees. That was number one. Number two, the tour would be the buyer, if you will, and the commissioner of the PGA Tour would be in charge. I thought that announcement was going to be received very favorably by the golfing world and certainly our PGA Tour players. In fact, we had a call in May where all the parties were on the call, and I went and told the head of the other side, Yasser, that this may be a tough day for you. I said it's so silly. I told him that these guys are not going to be happy, and he said, you're an unusual man, Jimmy, that you would bring that up with the other side because most guys wouldn't, that would not be at a negotiating 101. But if you're gonna walk. But my point was we hadn't settled on a deal. All we settled is that the lawsuits would be over and we would talk. And so I didn't want to have anything but complete trust from what I said.
Because you still had a lot to come.
We had the entirety to come. Not a lot, everything. All that we said was that the lawsuits would settle and we'd work on a proposal where the tour was the leading thing, which, by the way, a year and 3/4 later is what they're trying to do now, I think. So... But where I was naive was certainly the way it was received, and obviously the way it was rolled out, where the word merger was used. There wasn't a merger yet. There were a lot of mistakes. I said, to whatever degree I was responsible for the rollout, which I think one thing you wouldn't put me in charge of is PR, okay, is then I'm at fault for that. But I thought it would be something that would be received very well, and I'm still optimistic that they're doing that right now. I know that, obviously our commissioner and the head of the governor they played golf together 4 days ago. So I'm hopeful that we can work something out because golf needs to be united, and I think that's the right thing.
I'm going to leave that right there because that was good. That's what you did. What about golf from a personal standpoint? I mean, you got into it, as you said, you loved it. It's a meritocracy.
My father introduced me to golf. We'd go out to the public courses, we'd wait in line, and we spent a lot of time together. I just don't know another game like golf because you play around a golf with someone, you know who they are. Hopefully you have a friend for life, but you don't have to wonder very much about who this guy is or who this woman is. You know who they are.
100% right of that. Favorite course?
Well, I think my favorite club is Seminole for a lot of reasons, and I think the greatest golf course in the world is Shinnecock Hills, where Quack and I first played, and I told him when we were 16 years old, I said, Quack, this is the greatest golf course in the world. He said, Jimmy, you played like 5 golf courses. Well, I was 16. I'll be 68 in one Wednesday, and my opinion has not changed.
That's great. So let's go to another passion of yours, Notre Dame. And you've been passionate your whole life.
I love Notre Dame. I love what it stands for. I love what it does for people. I love what it did for me.
You gave the commencement address a few years ago.
That was a scary day, but yes, I did that. That's right. Father John, I told him, I said, if you want me to talk to 30 guys in the bar, I can do that, but there's no way in the world I'm going to do this. I'll find you somebody. And then he tricked me, and I did it. In hindsight, I'm glad I did it. I mean, 20 minutes before, I wasn't feeling real good. In fact, your friend Jack Brennan, before we walked out onto the stage, Jack was the chairman, and Father John was the guy, the president. And I was nervous, really nervous. A lot of people there, and they're academics. These not my crowd. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. And I know I have a text, but I can do anything. And so on the way out, I said to Brennan, who was chairman, and Father John, who was president, I said, look, you guys, I've never been more truthful in my life. I said, look, hey, I want you to know something. If I bomb here, it's not just me. You're going to look bad too. And that's why I said that. And Jack looked at me and said, I know. And
That's what Jack would do. Jack
said,
would up the stakes.
Yeah, he said, I know. And I looked at him like, oh, that didn't make me feel good. And Father John said, Jimmy, I've been president for 18 years. I've never been so comfortable in a decision in my life than this one.
That's a great thing.
Let's go. And I went, oof. And we went out, and my kids were there, my roommates were there. It was a good day. It went okay. But Notre Dame was a big thing in my household. I mean, that was the place on the hill. And we'd watch the Lindsey Nelson Sunday morning. You'd watch the highlights of the Notre Dame football and go, I had never seen Notre Dame when I went there. So Notre Dame was always that place on the hill. And again, it was golf. And I was out one night on this thing, and this guy came on, and I was putting him for quarters. And, he said, hey, where do you want to go to school? Just out of the blue. And I said, well, I think I'm going to try to go to golf. I think I'm going to try to play at Wake Forest around great schools. He said, but, so where do you really want to go, son? I said, well, I want to go to Notre Dame, but I don't know if I can get in, and it's cold at Notre Dame. He said, let me tell you something. If you want to go to Notre Dame, you make sure you call me. And my father just came and picked me up. It was just, I was caddy and picked me up. And he said, you know who that was on that green you were playing with? You were talking about? I said, I have no idea. He said, well, that's the first thing, Jimmy. You ought to know who you're talking about, because he was tough, my father. Anyway, and I said, well, okay, Dad. And then he said, that's J.M. Hager, from Hager Slack. He said, really? Anyway, fast forward a couple of years later, my father used to come out one night. I'd go down, he had the New York Post, which I read this morning. And in the article was that J.M. Hager had made a massive contribution to Notre Dame. He gave $7 million. They named a building. I remember the amount. And so I said, well, I got to call him. And he wrote a letter, which I have somewhere. It said, I want you to treat this applicant as if he was my son.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Because he got to know you.
Well, on the putting. And anyway, and I was really lucky to get into Notre Dame. But I was appreciative of it. And it also was a new leaf. Like, I was a marginal student in high school. I said, okay, look, there's a whole new program here. These guys don't know whether I'm smart. They think I'm smart because I'm here. They don't know that I'm really not, And so, I'm going to get, and I made the best of friends. I had an unbelievable experience. And it was a great opportunity. I felt the need to give back, and I've tried to do that. And both of my sons went to Notre Dame, and I'll be there this weekend. But that's what relationships do. You helped my son when he was coming out of college. Got him to a great spot. He had unbelievable 4 years. That guy that he worked for, Brian Pfeiffer, said, you need to go to business school. I said, you're not going to go to business school unless it's a great business school. Well, he got into Columbia. That's a hell of a school. But this is the stuff that happens, It
is. And it's the thing that you tell young people.
Absolutely.
Look, you don't know how it's going to get connected together. But if you follow your advice, get up, be the one out there when the sun's coming up. And some of the things we've talked about here. Yeah.
And what I like is this office is filled with people. Well, I don't know how they're going to do anything from home.
Yeah.
I mean.
Oh, no, I've been on that the whole time. So you too.
I told this story. I said, well, when I started at Rothschild, I commuted from Bayshore, Long Island. So I'd leave at about 3:50 in the morning. I got there, the first guy there. Olstein would come in. Schoenthal, Bauman, Jettleson. Well, the top producers were always the earliest guys there. Then I did another thing. In those days, you had to paper position. So what the firm owned, you did it on a photostat sheet, and you handed it to the top guys because they wanted the most current information so they could act on that information. Why not? Well, I made a deal. I didn't like to order lunch for 30 people because, I don't like it. I'm not saying I didn't like doing it. That's all. So I stayed into the position every night. Now, those guys were still there. And they would wonder, why are you always doing this? I said, well, I made a deal. He said, well, that sounds like a dumb deal. I said, well, I'm talking to you.
That's great.
Yeah. A year later, I was sitting next to him.
That is fantastic. I'm going to thank you for being here and end it there because it's just classic Jimmy Doug. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate you being here. our clients, everybody in the Rockefeller community is going to love hearing this.
Well, I appreciate it,
Thank
Greg.
you so
Nice
much.
to see you.
Great job.
Terrific.
John D. Rockefeller once said, "I do not think that there is any other quality so essential to the success of any kind as the quality of perseverance. You've demonstrated so much perseverance, resilience, and commitment to excellence in your own life. We're inspired by all of it and grateful to hear your story today." To our listeners, thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this incredible conversation as much as I have, and we look forward to bringing you more insights from our network of founders and entrepreneurs. All the best.